Missed an episode of your favorite podcast? Choose from over a decade of content in our archives, not just the latest episode. All free at gcnlive.com.
This is your call to action. Get prepared, America. Economy, survival, energy, disasters. This is USAPrepares.com. Informative radio, educational radio. Interact now by emailing instructor@USAPrepares.com or text at 434-390-7953. Class, please take your seats. Now, your instructor, Vincent Finelli.
Everyone all set, cocked, locked? Here we go. Your dial set correctly to USAPrepares.com. We broadcast 2 hours from high atop the Missouri Ozark Mountains. We're delighted you're here. Nathan's engineering the broadcast. I'm Vincent Finelli. If you'd like to call us, 866-582-9933, 866-582-9933. That's during the hours of 9 a.m. through 11 a.m. Central Time. If you'd like to listen to us as you travel, 605-477-3249. 605-477-3249. And Rick Miller's with us. Dr. Richard Allen Miller. Doc Ram, welcome.
Good morning. Well, it's interesting, and I'm glad that you and I get another round this morning. It's, with the way the world turns, who knows what's going to happen by next Thursday. It's that quick. I have to say I had a very nice talk with Nathan. I should mention that. I would be remiss if I didn't. He's been with you a long time, and yet I did not at first recognize his voice. Why? Mm-hmm. He's in a good mood. I couldn't recognize him. I said, "That's me. Who's me?" and it was cool. It's like he was today more engaged with life, and I could just tell that in the one sentence, because I talked to him a total of maybe half a minute once a week, and that's like so brief you don't even. It's like texting or something. You don't know whom you're talking to.
Nathan is a gem.
Yes, and it's the continuity, like marriage and friendships, the ones that go on and on year after year. There are people I have not heard or seen in 30 years, and I just met several different friends of mine from 30 years ago, and it was as if there was no time between those times. That's what friendships are. You can tell right out of the gate who's a real friend, because it's not about time.
Our son asked me many, many years ago, probably a couple decades ago, to define, what is a good friend? And I thought about it. I was in Virginia at the time on the farm, and I said, okay, in monetary terms, a friend is someone you could ask for $1,000 and with no strings attached. Just say, may I borrow $1,000? That's all he's saying. And that person would respond. And here's what happened. I immediately sent an email to one of my very close friends, 3,000 miles away. Hadn't seen him in years. Spent some time with him in college. A lot of time with him. And fraternity brother, close friend. And I said, may I borrow $1,000? Vincent. And I got a reply back almost immediately and said, I can't do it right now. And what I didn't know was that he was in financial trouble. And, the investments that he made had gone south, as many had back then. And, I remember that very fondly. Now, I didn't need $1,000. I didn't want to borrow $1,000. It was just, what would happen? What would happen? Kind of like if you sent a resume to a company to see if, just to wonder if the resume works. And it worked. And so I remember that to this day. But I'm not saying that friendship is monetary, because I don't think it is. But I was trying to figure out a way just to see if there was that level of friendship. And that's what happened, Rick.
It's interesting, like with family, I never do business with my family. If I have it, I simply just give it to them as a gift with no expectations, because that is not the kind of relationship stigma that I want with myself even. If I have it, it's yours. If I don't have it, I don't have it to give. I just simply don't. I work on such a fine edge between the streets and my bank account that I've never had money be an important thing in my life. And there are predators out there that are always needing money for something. Can I borrow this? Can I borrow that? And I freely give. And one of the things that my newest addition in friendships, and now my girlfriend, over the 4 years I've known her now, she has helped me get rid of the predators in my life. And even still, I find that my margins are still the same as they always were because of other mitigating circumstances. It's not like, if money were so important to me, I'd be just doing it all the time. I do it all the time anyway, but it isn't about money. I do it for the love of the game. That's the old expression, the love of the game. I never have worked in my life. I mostly do what I want to do, and I'm very fortunate that somehow it allows me to survive.
Rick, many years ago, I was a real estate investor. Small one, tiny, microscopic real estate investor. Well, but here's what I did. I had a opportunity to watch television, and I saw this commercial on how you can invest in real estate and become financially independent. Not wealthy, just independent at some level. And at the time, I had the meanest boss on the planet. And I thought, it would really be nice if I got fired, I just wouldn't lose everything. So I wanted to have a backstop. So I went to this course, and I learned how to become a real estate investor from book learning and attending one seminar. Did some more research, and I decided I was going to try it. So I bought a small single-family house, an apartment, that kind of thing. That's what I did. And I renovated them after work at the bank. And it worked out pretty well. For a while. The economy was growing, and the properties were appreciating. And anyway, I wanted to learn more. I bought a couple of properties, and I realized that I didn't know what the realtors knew. So I decided to study for the state licensing examination and take the required hours and hours and hours of coursework to become a licensed realtor. And I did, and I passed the exam. But I didn't do it because I wanted to become a realtor. I didn't want to do that. But I just wanted to know what realtors knew so that I could go into these transactions a little more prepared, maybe a lot more prepared. So I had a friend who wanted to buy a house, his first house. He'd just gotten married. He wanted to buy his first house. And the way real estate commissions work is the selling agency gets half of the commission. The listing agency gets half of the commission. And if you're the broker of the selling agency, you get all of that commission, all of that half. And the same with the buyer side. But if you are an agent for the real estate company, you would split that half with your broker. So what would happen is, if the commission were 6% on the transaction, 3% would go to the selling agency, 3% would go to the listing agency, and 3% would go to the selling agency. And the actual real estate agent would get half, or 1.5%. And I never got a commission because I gave my commission away to the young family that wanted to buy the house. I thought that they could use that to help them with their down payment. So I don't know how to make money. I don't know how to do it. And I'm not in it for that. And I don't get paid for broadcasting. I never have. We don't have any sponsors that pay us at the moment. And so it's a labor of love, Rick. It's a labor of love for you.
I have a comment to make about that regarding radio. Yeah. I did Chris and Cherie Gio's radio last week to 150,000 young drug users. That means their primary broadcast is on ayahuasca and the different kinds of drugs. And the stories, these are young kids that are experimenting, and they listen to this radio primarily to hear about other people and their experiences with this part of the universe. And I went in and talked about the fact that they were performing an act of magic, and that if they were going to take shortcuts to Grandma's house through the woods, that they absolutely needed to protect themselves from cooties, psychedelic meltdowns, and all the rest of the things that happen when you take a shortcut to altered states of consciousness. And you know what they did? They had so many people come back into their show appreciating my take on things rather than condemning it or saying it's dangerous this way or it's good that way. And, oh, wow, man, the Earth's flat. Are we moving? Yeah, man, I think they're parked here. You know, a Cheech and Chong kind of response. And I got a $100 donation for the first time from a radio station that is running on short shoestrings, because the kids need and wanted and recognized the need to be validated and told how to do it correctly. So that it was Timothy Leary, set and setting. You set it up so you can assimilate the experience. If you just go in and dig them mindlessly to get away or to see what's going to happen, you know, that kind of thing, what happens next is it all happens.
Okay, hold that thought.
The bad, and the ugly.
Hold that thought. We'll be right back. Doc Ram's with us, Dr. Richard Allen Miller, and if you want to go to that website, you'll find he's got some specials on his books, and you can get them, and you can even get them autographed. Rick, you mentioned Chris and Cherie Gio.
Yes.
Now, I've never met them in person. However, they were kind enough to offer Aaron Dakins, who you know, who's on this network, GCN, and me, a 2-hour broadcast. And Aaron Dakins and I used to broadcast on Truth Frequency Radio on Fridays. And it was called The Bunker Files. And we used to talk about...
That's right, The Bunker Files.
Yep. You know, and time did not permit us to continue. Friday afternoons were really
you ought to
tough
hook
for me.
up as a mutual friend because, like, Robin Volkov and Solaris Blue Raven, some of these people in radio now have become really good, close friends of mine, just because I never go where they think I'm going to go, and it always is. It's fun. I'm making lots. I'm very lucky. It's not about money.
I would say fortunate. Say fortunate. Yeah. I haven't met a gentleman by the name of Vinny Eastwood. However,
he's a musician, frustrated. He does radio, but his music that's his big deal, and he thinks he's a singer. It's all good. He's so dramatic.
I'd love to chat with him, and maybe we could do a
There's smart kids out there. That's what I'm finding now, are the ones that are doing radio that are really young, are bright. And when I say bright, I've just met another one that will probably be on Coast to Coast shortly. He goes by GG, 2 Gs. And I did some studio with him last night. I'm going to do more when I return from Chicago. Speaking of Chicago, I would be remiss if I didn't mention that I'm going to get to see Joey and Russell Both are coming to Chicago. Janet Randall. Let me tell you something about Janet. I haven't spoken to her. I went downstairs and I found these 2 books that didn't belong downstairs. And when I brought them up, out dialed a card that I was going to send her for thanking her for giving me those books. And why is it there? I don't know. That's probably because I didn't send the thank you card. She was so kind to pick me up and take me to the airport when I left the last time I was with you. It was just very, very nice of her. She gave me 2 books while she was at it, and I wanted to personally thank her, like Grace Thorne and others that I have met because of you. Grace is going to come back out here, hopefully forever.
Wonderful. And class, if you're wondering who Janet Randall is one of our original meetup group members when we had our meetups for 5 years or so. And she'd been to all the expos, and she has a huge heart, absolutely huge.
Oh, unbelievable. She's a really cool person, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think she got up in the middle of the night or something to take you, or got up really earlier. I mean, she will do that. And no strings attached. She just wants to help people. And so, thank you, Janet Randall. I saw her a couple days ago. I was in Norm Shealy's scalar room as part of that study, and to see the effects of scalar energy on people. And she pulled up the recliner next to me, and she handed me this pair of yellow glasses, and she wanted to make sure I had a pair of yellow glasses. And I thanked her, and I said, I have a pair, but I really appreciate it. That's the kind of person she is. And if that were her last pair of glasses, she'd still give it to someone. And
she's just and Grace Thorne,
Yep.
You know, she's had an accident where she broke her arm twice now since she's been gone. She has some creepy homes that she's trying to sell that's haunted. And I told her that she should advertise that in the Berkeley Barb or the Greenwich Village News. And, you know, some rich, off-the-wall Wall Streeter would love to have a haunted house that's on the registry as haunted.
Well, Grace Thorne is our 6th grade teacher in
Ryan.
Yeah, Ryan, Oklahoma. And she would let her children, students, prepare questions for Doc Ram, Dr. Richard Allen Miller, Norm Shealy, and put them on the air one at a time in the conference room. It was great
I would
radio.
be also remiss if I didn't say something about Norm Shealy and the effect that he's had in both your and my life.
Absolutely. Dr. Richard Allen Miller is with us. Doc Ram. Hey, Rick, you know, we've been burning fossil fuels, as they've been called. We've been burning oil. We've been polluting the planet. We've been reducing the oxygen content of our atmosphere for, well, since before the Industrial Revolution. Geothermal energy. What are your thoughts on that? You've linked to it on your
I've got lots of
page.
thoughts on all of it that I post.
Yeah.
That's why I post them. And that, again, must say thank you to all of my lead scouts. Joey is at top of the list with J.C. Cole, and now Gabrielle Delicio and others are right there with me. And Nexus Magazine, my first and only love magazine that I really love to write for, has now got a news feed with Gaia, and they've become a lead source. They're exceptional. And Nexus, news source. Where do I begin? You wanted to talk about Fukushima and the possibilities of the terriblest, most. I posted again this morning on that as well. Our technology has led to the demise of the 6th epoch. It's a timing thing. And it turns out, just FYI, that previous epochs, they are now discovering they also had spaceflight. They were right there where we are, and sometimes they blew themselves up on Mars, and there's the asteroid belt, and sometimes they were here on Earth, and God took care of it with floods and other kinds of natural disasters. This time, This is the trial by fire, and that's a tapésia. And, it's been written about in the Colburn Bibles, what you now call the Old Testament. There they are from previous epochs. We've come to this moment where we're dead. It is the end of things. And that's the way I posted it this morning with Anonymous after yesterday's post that I did with WikiLeaks. Now, I'm gonna say things that are really, I hope, positive about all of this, in that what have you learned in this moment of being in this little bubble of time? And what I have learned is where I'm going at the moment and the moment just after death. I can't prove it, but I have taken the best physics that I can and the best metaphysics beyond physics, and I have described the multiverse, which is a new theory coming out, and I have posted yesterday and the day before the mathematics that show how that universe is structured in our current understandings of physics. And it is about the moment. And this is an illusion. Time is not real. It is experienced differently at different ages. Children have a totally different relationship to time than you and I. And yes, things are speeding up. Yes, it is the end of things. Like the beginning of other things. That's what an ending is. An end is not the end. It is also a beginning. And that is, it is a concept that is power enabling, or it allows you not hope, but that's Corinthians 1:13. It was faith, hope, and love, not charity, and not in the original Greek translations. And the Greek had a culture that was social culture that we only dream of in terms of their relationship to themselves and the concept of archetypes and the way there was recurring stories in the big city. And basically in Jungian psychotherapy, that form of technology, believe it or not, even though it's called soft science, is not soft at all any more than nuclear radiation is soft. And our concepts of power and energy are way off. You can change space-time with sound and movement. Ghost dance and whirling dervish, the movement of your hands has a metaphor to space-time. And we don't understand that. We know that Gabriel had some kind of horn. We know that there were types of magic that could occur in real time that we don't. Vimana was a spacecraft that traveled out of Hindu mythology. And so now the Clovis down in South Mexico, they had space travel. And we go to the Cave of Dreams in France, and there's your star maps. And there's your reverse star maps seen from space. So what this is a lesson in why you do what you do, because it has reverberations in other universes that affect you. The soul. What is the soul? We've never had, Stag and the Unicorn and the Forest Ghost, soul and spirit within matter. That is an old alchemical thing from the 14th century that still is a underlying movement of our belief systems today. And belief systems turn out to be tools. They are not God-given. They are arbitrary, just like you were born in the United States is arbitrary over Pakistan. And so once you grasp that, and your belief systems then become tools, and to evolve, consciousness is to understand that altered states of consciousness is a gift from God in a toolbox where you can do things that you cannot do in a conscious waking state. And when you dream, And when you astral project, and when you go to soul travel, where you leave your body and your soul goes home for a moment with a shabbat out of the appendices that they talk about, and near-death experience, the same thing happens. It is your soul is memory water in a microtubule that leaves the body at the moment of death. There is a 2.3 ounce weight loss in everyone at the moment of death. And I'm telling you, it's a literal, has a physical component, a physical metaphor that has, if it exists on higher levels of dimensions in a holographic system, it has a physical analog. And that's why they call it metaphysics, beyond physics. And you have a special application into the physical world like you might in an archetypal world. It has metaphor. And what is your metaphor? But to serve your paradox. And that's how you go from one subsystem to many subsystems, just like your individual cavitation ball goes to a multiverse of you can't even imagine. I mean, it's unimaginable because that is what God is. That which cannot be known. What you know is basically what you can become in your own lifetime if you were to use your full potential. You don't. The purpose of being here is to discover that. I have been writing, as you can probably tell, and I've come to some very interesting conclusions where I no longer have a fear of what we've done wrong, done right. It is all in God's plan. And so there's different ways of choosing to look at what's going on. I'm a physicist that is trying to evolve physics so that it can grasp. And in magic, that was Aleister Crowley's so-called secret. Within the OTO, the outer lodge, was an inner lodge called Argeum Argentum, Order of the Silver Star. And that was through the method of science with the aim of religion. You are trying to go someplace using a physical model. Now, that's what we're doing right now. We're in the physical plane, which is just a very low level of what we are potentially capable of. And that happens at the moment of death or when you dream at night. That is one of the purposes of lucid dreaming, is that you have conscious control and awareness of the dream state. And in that moment, you are starting to truly evolve.
Rick, you've got an update on DocRam.com.
I'm sorry, I didn't answer the question. I did another one.
We'll get to it. You've got a post on DocRam.com, and it says, Fukushima is not a threat. It is one event in the ELE, end of life on Earth process that has been ongoing since 1945. By 1950, there was already enough above ground and blown into the atmosphere radioactive material to ensure an end of life on Earth.
Yeah, Hanford, yeah.
Yeah, and it says just Hanford is enough. And we're talking about the Hanford Reservation. In the U.S., there are 100 rust bucket reactors operating beyond all safe conditions. The Atoms for Peace, the Atoms for Peace was the biggest scam ever pulled off. Nuclear power for electricity generation only exists to serve the nuclear weapons industry. And then it goes on to say, you might have noticed the infrastructure collapsing around you. North America was abandoned 50 years ago. Why? It's already been nuked.
For my statement for the day.
All you have to do...
It's a pretty gruesome analysis like our power. Do you know that Oregon right now has buoys that go up and down with the tides that create power? And just to put those up in Nova Scotia, where the tides move 60 feet every day, because that's what happens up in that part of the world, is enough to power the entire eastern seaboard with just buoys going up and down in the water.
Yeah, and Rick, that was proposed in one of those popular science or popular mechanics magazines probably 40 years ago. We'll be right back. So, Rick, we've said it many times, including the day after the Fukushima disaster, that Fukushima was the worst man-made disaster since Noah's flood. We've been roundly criticized for that. I still think it holds true, and based on what you're saying, this is the worst thing we've ever done, right?
Well, if it isn't, it's right in there. Yeah, we've done a lot of things, and they were inevitable.
Why do you say that? Why do you say that? Because I think war can be averted. I think if we allowed
there's only been in biblical history a 2-year period where the world was not at war somewhere on Earth. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Good luck with that. War is one of the things humans do. Just like you don't see deer having a war.
No.
I mean, you know, it's a thing that is about man and the duality of man. That's why you have two brains. If you're not at war outside in the physical world, there certainly is one going inside with a masculine and feminine part of self. It is a metaphor, again. It is that it's all of it, not just one thing or another. There's the good, the bad, and the ugly. And, man, I go back to spaghetti westerns. It is inevitable that we would come to a place where it is at the end of something. And thank God for that. Truthfully, thank God for that. Now, with that said, it is also like the Beatles would sing, the end is always about a beginning. Is the glass half empty or is the glass half full? It's both, actually.
Rick,
truthfully, how much more do you need?
Rick, have you seen the movie called Hacksaw Ridge? It's
yes,
a true
I did.
Story. Okay, yes. Class, it's the true story of Private First Class Desmond T. Doss. And he won the Congressional Medal of Honor despite refusing to bear arms during World War II on religious grounds. He enlisted. He was beaten by his peers. He was bludgeoned, mercilessly treated by everyone around him. They were going to sentence him to confinement in the brig because he refused to bear arms initially. He said he wanted to enlist, he wanted to be a medic, he wanted to save people rather than kill people. And he wanted to do it without arms, and he was told that he could do that during enlistment. And then the Army reneged, and they said, no, you gotta carry a rifle. And he was just treated in the most horrific way you could think of. And he went on to save 75 men in the Battle of Okinawa. A horrific battle, absolutely horrific. And without ever holding a gun to kill anyone. It looked like the only time he picked up a rifle was to wrap it around a blanket and use it to drag a man on the blanket. But he didn't point the rifle at anybody. So anyway, class, if you see Hacksaw Ridge, it's a 2016 drama, 2 hours, 19 minutes. It's rated R. It's rated R for absolute horrific atrocities that occur during war. People being blown up and dismembered, legs blown off. I mean, just the horrors of war. If you get a chance to see that, if you have the stomach for it, you will
thou shalt not kill another. That's
right.
One of the 10 commandments. And there's other ways to kill them softly. I'm kidding. The thing is, it is part of man, and that's why we're human, and what makes us distinctly different than most other species. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Even orca. which is a superior mammal in many, many ways in terms of its design, brain capacity to go down into the deep sea, whatever pressures. I have to tell you, we're a byproduct. This song is not about us. And once we get that concept, then you start.
Rick, we just went into a break.
Okay.
We'll be right back. Everyone all set, cocked, locked? Hour number 2 of USA Prepares. Doc Ram's with us, Dr. Richard Allen Miller. Rick, happy birthday.
Grumpy old men, are we? I didn't even think about it when I woke up this morning. I didn't even remember until I started getting calls, and my girlfriend, first thing, happy birthday. I'm 73, grown. I don't make a big deal out of it anymore. There's other things more important going on than my birthday.
I think we just told the world, Rick, that...
I did what?
We just told the world that it's your birthday today.
Yeah. Thanks. Thanks a lot.
Rick, we've got George in New Hampshire. Welcome, George.
Hi, Vincent, and hello, Dr. Rick, and happy birthday.
Yeah.
I don't. Yeah. Like they say, it's just a number. But I just wanted to say I don't want to wear out my welcome, but my father was on Okinawa, and he was a medical corpsman, and he was with the surgeons and stuff in the tents there. He didn't talk much about it, but Mel Gibson said something I don't think you might realize, that he goes, he wasn't allowed to tell some of the more dramatic and unbelievable stories about Private Desmond Dawes, who the movie centers around, Hacksaw Ridge. They said that when he was in some other battles and other islands, and they said that when he was wounded a couple of times, and they said when he was on the stretcher and he was wounded, if the stretcher was passing, his stretcher was passing by a man who was more wounded laying there, he'd literally throw himself off the stretcher and tell the medics, hey, no, take this guy first. He's more wounded than I am.
Mm-hmm.
That's a Quaker concept that has made me actually take a closer look at Christianity in that sense of it.
Mm-hmm. George.
I'm sorry.
Yes.
Go ahead.
I was going to ask you something. I was thinking about you. I think about you often. Seriously, off the air.
Thank you.
I'm serious. I'm very serious,
cool.
George.
Yeah.
And I was thinking last night about the people who are involved in USA Prepares. And of course, you are one, George. And I wanted to invite you to become an instructor, but I don't have your phone number. So I wanted to call you off the air. So maybe this is the height of putting you on the spot.
The purpose, the purpose.
Yeah, you have such a wealth of information. And I was describing you to our family, that you are a wealth of information and you are well-spoken, deliberate, accurate, have so much insight that I wanted to invite you to be an instructor. So before you disconnect, if you decide that you would consider that, would you leave your number with Kyle, who is in the engineer's seat right now, engineering this broadcast? So, Kyle, if
what
George...
happened to Nathan?
Well, Nathan started the broadcast, and Kyle, they switch seats a lot because there's a lot going on at GCN. There's many six broadcasts going on at one time. And depending on who's where, they fill in and cover for each other at times. So Kyle helps us. He's a great guy. Nathan, great guy. John was moved upstairs to another task. So John has his last broadcast with us was several days ago. But, he may be back. He's a good guy. I am so fortunate. We are so fortunate, class, to have the support of and be side by side with our engineers. I thank you all, engineers. But if you could, Kyle, if George will be willing to leave his contact number, I'd like to call you, George, sometime today.
Sure.
Okay.
Can I just say one other thing, if I may?
Sure, please do.
Or actually, two other things real quick.
Sure.
One is, it's interesting because when you look at the interviews of the people who portrayed the various characters in Hacksaw Ridge, which was, of course, based on a true story, they were all Australians, and their accents, and I think it just is a testimonial to just Hollywood today that Mel Gibson had to go all the way to Australia to make it, and he couldn't. In all probability, I can't swear to this, but I'd bet money that he couldn't get it made in America, the movie.
Yeah, that's Hollywood for you. Totally. That's Hollywood.
Right.
Mel
The
Gibson.
last thing I'll just say, I'm sorry. No.
I know
The
a
last thing I'll
man.
just say, I'm going to break a rule for you, Vincent. You know what my rule was? Remember Groucho Marx when he said, any organization that would have me as a member, I wouldn't join. I'm only kidding. No, I'm very complimented, and believe me, coming from you, you meant birds of a feather flock together. Let's put it that way. Right, Dr. Rick?
I don't know about that part, man. I join everything.
Yes. Yes.
I'm very complimented and honored, and I hope that I never do anything to make you regret your decision. That's all I'm going to say.
I can't think of that ever happening, George. So I assume that is a yes.
Yes, emphatically.
You know, I've
love
met
it.
some very cool people through Vincent. You know, Rich Sheben, others, as just Aaron Dakin. I mean, it's very, very cool.
You know what's interesting,
I'm
Rick?
proud to be
since
part of your organization. Proud, actually.
I'm honored and flattered. You know what was really interesting? When we have a get-together here at the farmhouse, and we've got like Matt Stein and Aaron Dakins and Rick Miller and Rich Sheben and John Statmiller, and we're all around the table, we can be having, 10 different conversations simultaneously.
Yeah.
And it's fascinating.
It all in on the couch.
Okay. So, George, I really...
Right. No, I'm sorry. I'll just say this. I want to be part of the group someday, sitting with Dr. Shealy in a restaurant and being asked to leave because we're laughing so hard.
Well, it's true. It's true. I was at a restaurant with Dr. Norm Shealy. He invited me and Dr. Sergey Sorin, who is an emergency room doc. They are in practice together in Springfield. And Mrs. Finelli and Dr. Sergey Sorin's wife. And we were literally laughing. I mean, it was a quiet restaurant. You could hear a pin drop, except for our little corner. And we weren't trying to be disruptive. We were just having fun. It's not like we're all smashed, because that didn't happen either. We're just enjoying each other's company. And Norm Shealy is a national treasure.
Yes, he is.
Right. I'd say there's a man who's a seeker of wisdom and truth, and God knows if he should be the man that they put in charge of the FDA if he'd take the position. Because I always remember Dr. Carlton
EPA and their WikiLeaks and their consortium with Monsanto. That was another post I put down today. And let me tell you, the whole thing's a mess.
I can imagine Dr. Shealy, I can't say this is for sure, but I can imagine Dr. Shealy calling a meeting if he were to head that organization. I can just see him saying, thank you all for coming. I'm glad you were able to make this first meeting with me. This is your last meeting with me.
Yeah, really. That's the way it would play. I don't think Norm would do such a thing, though. I don't think he'd want to have anything to do with that.
Well,
you mean with the FDA?
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. I think he'd fire everybody.
I can't imagine him accepting a post like that. I mean, why?
Do you gentlemen remember Dr. Carlton Fredericks?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Now, he was a pioneer in nutrition, and he even said, we're going into medically uncharted territory, nutritionally uncharted territory. And he predicted this way back when, all this diabetes explosion, everything else. But he was offered the headship by Richard Nixon of the FDA, I think it was. And he told Richard Nixon, he says, listen, he says, when you have an agency that protects people from other agencies in this government, he goes, I want to be the head of that.
I remember that because I was actually part of the Pentagon and actually went into the Oval Office once a week. I remember Richard Nixon. Oh, yes. And you know what? Nixon was smart enough to get it.
If I remember correctly, well, I know my mom used to listen to Dr. Carlton Fredericks for years and years and years on AM radio back in the 1960s. I know that, and I would listen to him as well. And he was a professor at Fairleigh Dickinson University. And I believe he was on WOR radio, AM 710 at the time. And I remember him saying something that I thought was fascinating. And that's where my mom got a lot of her nutritional information. And she outlived by far, and is still living with us, her brother and sister, who did not follow Carlton Fredericks' nutritional information. But Dr. Carlton Fredericks was on the air, and he did not take calls because it was before call-in radio. And I remember him reading a letter. He said, I have a letter from a listener, and it says, Dr. Fredericks, how do you feel about exercise? And he went on to say, whenever he got the urge to exercise, he would lie down until it passed.
Yeah, his humor. That's how you tell where someone's coming from. That's the way I like it.
He was absolutely brilliant. He would talk about beta-carotene. He would talk about a lot of the things that Norm Shealy talks about and recommends. So the things that, I got to tell you, I've tried a number of things that Dr. Shealy recommends. I went to his office. I bought a lot of, I pay the same price everybody else does. So I don't get these things, for free. So I bought some of his supplements. I think he's right on the money. I haven't found anything that he said
take a look at his
didn't
physical body and his mind at his age, and that's what I want to be when he's my senior and something that I aspire toward.
Mm-hmm. George, did you want to hold through the break?
Yes, yeah, sure, if it's okay with you.
Yeah.
Well, you just joined the faculty.
There you are.
make sure you give Kyle your phone number during this break, okay?
Okay, sure.
Okay. Doc Ram's with us. George in New Hampshire has just joined the faculty as of the last segment. I'm delighted to welcome George. He's on the line. Kyle, I've got a special favor to ask of you. I see on the call screen, Gwyneth is calling in live from Australia. Can you have all of us on at the same time, please? Can you make that happen? Okay. There we go. Gwyneth, welcome.
Hi, Vincent. How are you?
Well, I have a feeling that you are being looked at.
Yes. Gosh, after that radio show on Tuesday, I had a relative of mine in Western Australia had some visitors. Okay. The WA police showed up, and they they had warrants for my arrest from Western Australia and also from Queensland. Now, many years ago, my children were abducted by the pedophile cartel in Queensland, the one that's operated by the government. And I went and got them back and fled. So like I say to people, I've been doing this for a while, okay? Yeah, but it's... that's what happened. And so I'm definitely, Alex Jones says that when you are flying over target, you know about it because you begin to get the flak.
Yes.
Let
me make sure, Gwyneth, let me make sure I understand. So your children were kidnapped by CPS, Child Protective Services, that kind of a group?
Yeah, the equivalent, yeah.
How old were they?
They were, at the time, 1 and 3.
Oh,
Okay.
my. Oh, my.
And then you got, and you somehow got them back.
Yeah.
Okay.
And fled.
And then you fled.
For my life.
And you fled for your life. And why did they take your children in the first place?
Well, I found out that the Queensland police were doing something that they shouldn't have been doing, okay? And, you know, if anything happens to me, if anything happens to family members of mine, then that information will be released. Okay?
Individuals, or is it an organization?
Well, there's people out there in the universe that have that information. That's all I'm prepared to say.
Yeah,
I've been
yeah.
instructed to release it. If I, if anything happens to me or if anything happens to my family members, and that includes imprisonment, because I know this for sure, but the Queensland police wanted me dead at that time. That is my firm belief, based on solid evidence. And, you know, the WA police, basically, there were a pair of pedophiles who were living around the corner from us at that time, and they tried to abduct my son 6 times over a period of 4 years. We fled from Queensland to Western Australia. And likewise, if I'm imprisoned, it has to be with the assumption that they want to really, really hurt me, okay, based on my knowledge of how they operate.
You know that England just cleaned house, just like you need to do now. You know, they arrested a whole bunch of congressmen on pedophilia just recently.
Okay, the names of those pedophiles who lived around the corner will be released if I or my family members are harmed. Okay?
Well, I'm all excited, class. You have a new instructor, George in New Hampshire. He's on with us right now. Doc Ram's with us. Rick, we started talking about geothermal energy, and we started talking about the pollution and the mess we've made. Geothermal energy, it seems to me, is an ideal solution. However, I would place the caveat that we need to make sure that we don't waste energy. You know, there's no reason to waste energy. We need to be efficient.
Matt, listen, Dire Straits and Mark Knopfler said it most succinctly in his song, Energy's for nothing and the chicks are free. Free energy is that, just exactly that. It's free because it's a concept. And actually, that's what they're calling cold fusion now, free energy. And cold fusion is seen in physical reality as the leading edge of a wave in the ocean. That's exclusion zone water, which is different than water, moving faster than water. And oh, guess what? Where did that energy come from? The tides and the way the stomach turns. Oh, the world, sorry. It's a concept. And everything is actually right there. Even if they put me in debtor's prison, I'm going to have toilet paper.
So Rick, let's talk about geothermal energy. Let me just give you
Hot tubs are us.
Okay. Well, here at the farm, 11 years ago or so, I was trying to decide how we were going to heat the farmhouse. And of course, there's solar hydronic, there is geothermal. And what the plan was, if we did that, is we would trench these 6-foot deep trenches in the yard around the house, and we would extract heat from the ground and use that for heating. And it would also be the heat sink to dump the heat from the house in the summer into this ditch with this hydronic piping. And it was really expensive. It was in the $45,000 range, as I remember it. You know, contrast that with a traditional heating system with heat pumps, air-to-air heat pumps, in the $25,000 range, with metal ductwork and so forth, insulated ducting, and then with propane backups all built in for around maybe $20,000 really, and there are even less expensive heating systems. But
yeah, you could have put pipes on the top of your house, running water through it, and paint them black.
Yeah.
Well, another thing
that's free energy. It's just a concept.
George?
You could even, like something as primitive as like one of those barrels that you paint black and fill with water to a certain level, and you put it on the side of the house where it gets the most sun, and long after the sun sets, those barrels of water take a long time to cool down. They'll continue to radiate out the heat.
Yeah, and your thermal heat is mostly if you put your house up next to a bank and you fill it full of old milk cartons full of water, that acts as a heat sink so that the change doesn't change as much as the ambient might outside. That's why you build next to a mountain rather than being on top of it.
There's a couple of videos on YouTube on how to do this. And what some people have done is they've taken aluminum beverage cans, we'll call them soda cans, and they've punched a hole in the bottom of these beverage cans and opened the hole a little bit in the top. So now it goes from being a container to a tube. And the soda cans can stack one on top of the next on top of the next. What they do is they put these soda cans in a vertical format in a glass enclosed double glazed glass frame. Let's say 8 feet by 8 feet, and they have a hole in the bottom for an air duct for the air inlet, cold air in at the bottom of this box. And let's say the box is 6 inches deep, 8 feet by 8 feet, double glazed glass. And it's placed so that it faces directly south, and it's on the right angle for your location. And these cans are painted flat black. The sun heats them up. It heats the air inside. The air rises to the top of this 8 foot by 8 foot box, and then exits like a 4-inch plastic pipe. And the air gets heated to like 130, 140 degrees in this thing. So what happens is you can either put a fan in there and have it a small fan and move the air, or you can just use the natural rising of the heat to heat part of your house. And depending on the size of your house, if you can spread that heat around, you might even be able to heat a huge section of your house on sunny days in the winter. So it's almost free. It might cost a couple $100, but there are no moving parts except for the fan if you choose to put one in there. It's just unsightly, and your neighbors might not like it, and the Civic Association might jump on you, but who cares about that? I just fight those.
Well, then if you recycle your can, they'll put it back, not in recycle, but in your atmosphere as a chemtrail. That's what's happening now with our so-called recycling program. They're no longer using aluminum, and aluminum should have been phased out a long time ago, because do you realize how much hydroelectric power is required to set up an aluminum processing plant?
Mm-hmm. It's huge. Rick, I was outside yesterday with our son and George. I said, look at this. I have never seen a chemtrail like this. Now, we have lots and lots of crisscrossing chemtrails across the farm here in Missouri, but I've never seen what looked like a curved railroad track, 2 planes flying side by side, separated by some distance, but it didn't look like all that much distance.
Chemtrails, according to Carnegie Mellon.
Well, these airplanes were going around in a circle side by side, and the chemtrails were there. I had never seen that. I've seen straight chemtrails. I've seen crisscross, checkerboard patterns, diagonal patterns, every kind of pattern you can think of, but I've never seen 2 planes flying side by side, laying down the same track.
Yeah. This is a step up, and who knows why.
So
Not about
Donald Trump,
warming. That's already been disproven and shown to be false with, again, WikiLeaks.
So I would consider this a threat on the president's life, these chemtrails, because he flies a lot. And for his own safety, I think Donald Trump ought to knock off these flights, these chemtrail flights. Absolutely stop them.
Do you realize how radioactive an aircraft is just coming from Asia into LAX? It's so bad now that they no longer clean the plane in front of the public because DEQ has to be there to monitor the radiation being washed off that aircraft because of Fukushima. That is how bad it is right now.
All right, Rick,
I'm sorry. You said DEQ. Could you just say what
Department
those letters
of
stand
Environmental Quality. They're ones that do all the monitoring of biohazard.
Thank you.
Okay, so let's talk about that. So they wash these planes down, and the water runs downhill. Everywhere I've been, whether it be the East Coast, the West Coast, or here in Missouri, water runs downhill. So where does that water go? It goes into the storm drains, right?
Yeah, you get to drink it later.
That's the
like
point.
Japan is right now. Do you realize how toxic it is in Japan? That continent will no longer exist in your lifetime. It's going to fall into that big precipice. But right now, I mean, who could have... Why do they put these extremely dangerous processing plants, radioactive plants, in harm's way on the Madrid fault line where you live, in front of a tsunami-ridden town? There it was. It happened. Right just like they said it would.
Well,
yeah,
I'm sorry.
Eddie Murphy had a movie, I believe he starred in it. It was called Distinguished Gentleman, I think. And he's discussing the schools. Why are schools in locations where they have these massive power lines over the playground or over the school building? So these children, for 6 hours a day, are blasted by this massive high voltage electromagnetic radiation. And class, just look at the schools in your neck of the woods and look at the power lines around them. You'll see what we're talking about. George?
Yeah, and imagine now they're making a law that it is prohibitive to have cell phones and smart meters around children anymore.
Well, I know in Europe it's against the law for a child who's 7 years old or younger to be given a cell phone or have access to it. They'll prosecute them for it.
Yep.
Because you've seen it. I know, Dr. Rick, and you may have too, Vincent, that they show the electromagnetic wave going into the skull because the skull is not as dense because it's not developed like an adult's would be, so it's still malleable and softer. And they said the penetration into the brain is much deeper. And you know and I know that the powers that be will not allow a lot of studies to be done or will suppress those that shows any detrimental effects from cell phones.
It's taxable and income for you-know-who. It's all crazy. And that's why it's the end of days and the end of this epoch. Our technologies have not been... that's why I'm going to propose. I've been invited to a major comic convention as the keynote speaker, and they're billing me as the real Dr. Strange. I'm going to be coming in where I crash. My entrance is going to crash a spaceship right into the conference, just like, Galaxy Quest. And I'm going to have a bunch of aliens chase me up onto the podium. I'm going to make a fun thing out of this whole thing. This is why physics has failed our society and why it's now going to have to change to something like magic, which is the art of changing consciousness at will, just like death, and sleep, and dreaming. These are tools that have been given to us by God that will allow us to evolve to the next level. And that is advanced physics with a mystery school.
George and Rick, we've become number 17 on TalkStream Live. Congratulations. Class, I want to thank you from the bottom of my heart. It seems that John Statmiller over on Republic Broadcasting was talking about me and gave out my email address. Not oh man,
I
and
know that song, man.
not Vincent at USA Prepares, but another one. And so he gave out my email address, and I've been getting all these well wishes for recovery, my speedy recovery. So I wanted to thank all of you. There's just too many to mention. I would love to do it, but wow, brought a tear to my eye, literally. And so thank you all so much. And of course, I haven't talked to Joey as much as I'd like to, but he's such a great scout, as you mentioned.
Another treasure.
Yes, a dear friend. He's been to the farmhouse, and I'm looking at a sign. It says, "Enter as strangers, leave as friends." And Joey found that somewhere. He said it. He thought of us here at the farmhouse, and he decided to bring that to us, and he did. So here it is in the studio. So Joey, thank you very much. And of course, he's an instructor. Rick, in the remaining time we have, you've got some specials at docram.com for your books, and anyone who would like to buy them gets a discount.
Yeah, guess what? In my battle with Amazon, I am about to release, I have the covers now, 120 one-hour audiobooks on my classes I taught at Harvard in metaphysics for 11 years.
Okay, and you'll announce pricing?
This is how I'm going to get them, man. Let's see them try to bootleg those.
Good for you. Good for you. And are you going to announce pricing and how to get it, next week maybe?
It'll be on my website, and I'm starting to group my books that Amazon can't bootleg. This is Create Space, just like Ingram's Lightning Source. Lightning Source has asked me to leave. They no longer want my business because I asked the wrong questions.
Good for you. Rick, in the remaining time we have left, crystal skulls, what are they? I remember Art Bell used to have some of his guests talk about them years and years ago. What are crystal skulls? What do we know? What don't we know?
They're probably alien, just like in Raiders of the Lost Ark. Who knows? They're an artifact of something we have forgotten. Just like song and dance were technologies like free energy. Just movement and sound is a source of energy.
Rick, there's a lot we don't know.
Yeah. Isn't it interesting that the more you know, actually, the less you actually know?
Yeah, my dad told me, half I'm going to tell you, half the other half you got to figure out on your own. And he got that from his father.
It is a truth that follows man.
One thing, Dr. Rick, if I might just interject, there's an outfit called Patreon. I don't know if you've heard of it, Patreon. And it's a place where people have been leaving YouTube and going over to Patreon so that they can put up, and they have patrons. They'll bring followings with them where people can give like anywhere from $1 and so on, and support as a patron of the arts, so to speak. And I don't know if that might be an avenue you might want to explore.
Thank you for the tip. You betcha. That's a good one. And I hope Russell and Helen listening in Brisbane and Michigan, Illinois, hear that. I am so overwhelmed with trying to just keep my own focus on what I want to do, which is basically right. That's what I'm doing now. I'm writing about the nature of death and what happens to consciousness. And guess what? It's not what you think. We don't go to heaven or hell. We get to go home.
Patreon, it says, the best way for artists and creators to get sustainable income. Patreon.com, Patreon, is home to 333,000 creators making a living from their work through subscription payments.
Thank you for the
by
tip.
Their fans.
That's a very good tip. Thank you.
George, thank you for joining the faculty. I'm grinning from ear to ear. I'd like to give you, I'd like to call you this evening if I may.
You may, and again, and many happy returns, Dr. Rick.
I hope you can make it to Chicago. Any of you guys that can, let me know, and I'll get you past the lines and the pay to get in. It'd be my pleasure to see all of you again.
Okay.
Rick, thanks so much.